Righty, ladies and gentlemen, as you're probably familiar with by now, Kuro Games has dropped one of the biggest drip marketing hauls they've ever done in the history of the game, with 5 new characters ready to go for version 3.0 and beyond. And one thing that we know from some of the other outlying material, some of the taglines that are on their actual marketing posts themselves, just go ahead and take a look at something like this. We know that these are individuals who are located at Startorch Academy. That is within Lahai-Roi, which is the next story focus for Wuthering Waves. And what I wanted to do was actually break down, when it comes to 3.0, when it comes to 3.x, when it comes to this new region, what do we actually know? What have we been exposed to in the story? And what can we actually expect moving forward? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a couple of tabs open over here. I've done quite a bit of research and have remembered a good bit from the past couple of main quests back in version 2.7 and 2.8, and I'm here to give a bit of a breakdown, a bit of a refresher right before we head on into our next version update. So without further ado, let's go ahead. We're also going to be using some of the supporting material from this trailer over here, the special record, to actually guide this discussion. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be reacting to this one for a little bit, but not before we prep the discussion first, so you all go into this trailer over here with a bit of a refreshed perspective. We're gonna kind of be going like chronologically in reverse order from like the 2.8 main quest, because that's likely the one that you played first. So do keep in mind there are going to be some story spoilers in here, but that's going to be essential for, I think, understanding where 3.0 is going to leave us off. What we know from the 2.8 main story quest is that Chisa is kind of, with the 20-year time gap, she is a student over at Startorch Academy. And one thing we were able to figure out from playing through the quest was that Rover was actually a student at Startorch Academy as well. Chisa actually returned to them their student card. And so a big thing about 3.0 and a big thing about Lahai-Roi and Startorch Academy is that it's like a big back to school sort of moment for the player character. There's no other reason why, when it comes to Wuthering Waves and the marketing that they did for the 3.0 arc, there's a reason why the first thing that preceded the drip marketing for these 5 characters was a letter of acceptance to Startorch Academy. So that's a little bit of the context for why Rover has a bit of a connection to this place. That's why they're going to be going there with Chisa after the main event after the main story of 2.8. It's because this sort of history is actually there. When it comes to the rest of 2.8, and when it comes to the rest of the quest, Shorekeeper actually gives us a bit of a lore breakdown for what's actually going on in Lahai-Roi and why this area is so, why this area seems like so hard to get to, so hard to quantify, so hard to talk about.
Startorch Academy, the school that you both once attended. As of now, we can confirm that the Academy, along with the entire region of Lahai-Roi, has been completely isolated from the rest of the world by the Void Storm.
So that's a really important thing to keep in mind when it comes to Lahai-Roi and Startorch Academy in particular. The Void Storm is a somewhat regular occurrence. It should probably give some info about that. It's like a cyclical occurrence that occasionally puts this part of the area or puts this part of the world into a state where no communication can actually be held. However, the Void Storm by itself, there's a reason why Startorch Academy is built in Lahai-Roi underground, because Lahai-Roi is like a snowy region. It's actually because of that Void Storm. And we'll learn more about why they're actually utilizing this Void Storm and what it's supposed to be used for a bit later on when we take a look at that trailer. But first, we've got to get some more context for what's actually going on in Lahai-Roi. So after this scene, after a bit more exposition and a bit more dialogue, we end up using our frequencies as Rover to kind of resurrect this radio. And what we end up finding out from this radio is that Chisa's mother is actually at Startorch Academy, and that whole relationship is still there after the 20 plus years. And so that's the reason for why Chisa's going to go. That's the story hook for us and Rover, right? The kind of Black Shore squad. That's the story hook for us actually getting there. And for some additional context on Startorch Academy, this is an academy that's essentially only for resonators. Yes, they accept like applications, and it was actually a way for Chisa Kuchiba to escape her awful upbringing and actually see some light in her life. That's just like a little bit about how it's been integrated in the story over here. This was all revealed in the 2.8 quest as well. This is a pretty strong premise for us to go explore and, you know, gain access to another place. You know, there's actually been like a mystical portal that like opened up over here. Let's see if we can get a shot of that. There was like a portal that actually opened up that shows us a bit of a preview of Lahai-Roi that opened up from Rover's frequencies, right? So they did a whole like medical care treatment, all of that to get him good to go. That's already a good premise for us to be hooked and get ready to go on this Academy arc, this Startorch adventure. But there's more. There's actually more track that Kuro laid in preparation for this moment. And to recognize the importance over here, we're going to have to go back to Wuthering Waves 2.7, where we got some lore tidbits about Lahai-Roi at the beginning of the quest, where Galbraida merely mentions
this cassette tape is a rare...
that her cassette tape that she uses to play music and all of that, it's from Lahai-Roi. I think this is more just like a flavor thing. It's not really that big of a deal. But the real significance of Lahai-Roi actually is over here. And so I'm actually going to play this back at like 2x speed because it's Schwarzlock that's talking, and this guy takes fucking forever to speak. But this was the ending of the 2.7 quest.
Diverge. Our ideals remain as one. In the end, they all lead to the same place.
So the Fractsidus over here are talking about their goals following Renacida, following the fall of Leviathan, following all of that.
Separation is but the prelude to possibility. All so that humanity may cross that final gateway into eternity.
So what we know about Fractsidus is that their goal is for humanity to transcend. The reason why Cristoforo does all this fucked up stuff across the entire 2.x arc is to essentially push human beings beyond their human limits to be able to resolve issues that are actually, you know, bigger than what the world has ever seen before. So basically, right, it's like this idea that through adversity, you become stronger. And so he's just constantly creating and hurling challenges towards the playable cast of characters so that they can become stronger. And the goal is that strength is going to be used to address an even greater threat in the future. And this is where everything starts to come together, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you pay attention to that part. The idea of a threat that's going to balloon and grow larger in the future that they're preparing for at this moment.
Our goals in Jinjo and Rinasita have been fulfilled. A Threnodian's resonator, an artificial Threnodian, and the second resonance awakening.
So these are all of the accomplishments that Fractsidus has made. And when you view these as accomplishments, it's a little bit odd, especially when you consider the fact that Fractsidus seems to have lost in all of these engagements, right? Second Resonance Awakening. That's when Jinsei goes to Mount Firmament, aligns with Jue, and then gets her Second Resonance Awakening. How does that even happen in the first place? Jue gets trapped by Fractsidus and requires help. And then Jue transfers the powers over after that whole incident occurs. So Fractsidus actually caused that. They look like they lost because Jinsei and Rover won, but that's actually a part of their plan. Then they have the whole issue with the artificial Threnodian, which was naturally, right, supposed to be the whole situation going on with Mia and Septimon in 2.4. They lost there again because Lupa destroyed Mia, but that was actually a part of their plan. Then you have the Threnodian's Resonator. You got Cartithia, where once again, we win because we beat Leviathan. We beat the hell out of them, right? After the entire 2.x arc. But that's still according to plan. So you can kind of view this as almost like experimentation by the Fractsidus, right? To tinker around, work scientifically through all these different processes to see what's possible and build out these capabilities. And when you view this from the perspective of, wait, these are all stronger than regular resonators. These are like all stronger than regular people. And we found out the way to create these stronger individuals. When you remember that ultimate goal of Fractsidus, right? To get everybody stronger to take on a bigger threat, it's starting to make a bit more sense, isn't it? Now let's listen to this last part.
We now possess both the knowledge and the means.
And that's how you know they were actually doing R&D this whole time.
Next, it is time we turn our gaze to our accomplishments in Lahai-Roi.
Next, it's time we turn our gaze to our accomplishments in Lahai-Roi, where Startorch Academy is. And this is really important here. This is past tense. This means that they've already done things. They've already started things, and that they're in motion, and that they've actually already been completed. And so, knowing this information from the 2.7 quest, and then knowing more about what's in the 2.8 quest, where Startorch Academy is in Lahai-Roi, let me provide some context about Startorch Academy. They're one of those institutions that is the main focus about them is to literally reach the stars, is to literally go to space. That's why it's called Startorch Academy. And a big part of where we learn that exposition is from everything that her academy instructors, that her friendly students, they're all saying to her, you're going to go super far. We have so many things we need to do. We need to go. We need to look for the stars. That's a huge focus of this entire quest over here. And so with that in mind, Startorch Academy is reaching forward to the future. Fractsidus has already started the motions in Lahai-Roi and potentially Startorch Academy. They're both looking forward to the future. Startorch Academy is just trying to advance civilization, and Fractsidus is trying to do the same thing. One's trying to do it by going to space, and the other, I guess, is trying to do it by strengthening all of humanity. Why is all of humanity being strengthened? Maybe it's because, ladies and gentlemen, there's a bigger threat in space. And perhaps that's where we go from 4.0, 5.0 onwards. Maybe after the 3.x arc, we literally unlock galaxy or dimensional travel, something like that. And that's actually where, or the reason for why Fractsidus has this almost like, let's just think about the motivations over here for Fractsidus. They are doing everything possible to make this vision of a like stronger human race happen. They're doing everything in their possibilities. They're sacrificing individuals. They're like burning down villages. They're causing domestic terrorism. All of that for this goal. Are you starting to see how Lahai-Roi, Fractsidus, all of this stuff is starting to align? It seems a little bit crazy, doesn't it? Now, with all of that context, all of that track laid out by me, indicating to you what Kuro Games has done. Now, with that framing, let's go ahead and take a look at this trailer. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, I do feel like, if you've already watched this before, I feel like on a rewatch, after all this context, you'll start to see a lot more significance in what's actually being shown over here. So let's go ahead and get right on into it. So first things first, a shit ton of space.
Past sparks pierce the void and illuminate Lahai-Roi.
I'll just let this part play.
The seed of civilization is buried.
So they're referencing over here the Void Storm, and the fact that it's hard to communicate with this area. But it seems like the Void Storm, and I mentioned this before, there's a reason why Startorch Academy is in that location. Because this whole seed of civilization thing leads me to believe that this gives the capability, right, for like a planet or somewhere else in the world to actually sustain life. And so, if this is a resource that they found, if this is something that, if this is a capability that they've developed, then yeah, of course you would want to go to space. Of course you would want to go to a different planet to be able to actually utilize this thing.
Ready to thrive.
And you're noticing, right, a lot of this stuff that you're seeing over here. Wait, another thing I forgot to mention. The Space Trek Collective is the organization that created Startorch Academy. So Space Trek, that's like another thing. You've been seeing also blueprints and designs of a bunch of, well, let's just take a look at some of the stuff over here. Reactor drive. Yeah, it would make sense that some of this stuff might actually be used for space travel purposes.
seed of civilization is buried.
The slumbering exostrider. Brother, this just sounds like mechas and shit like that.
Ready to thrive.
A Star Ward Riseway.
Into space we gaze,
Research Institute.
bound by our desire to return. We shall
Think about all of these scientific achievements. Think about all of this technology that we haven't gotten anything close to in Wuthering Waves before, right? Think about the land we were just from, Renacida. This is a complete polar opposite. Renacida probably steals tech from this place. This place makes Renacida literally look like cavemen, bro. And now think back to this quote over here from Schwarzlock, the leader of Fractsidus, the Fractsidus overseer. It's time we turn our gaze to our accomplishments in Lahai-Roi. Now the question that you all might be having is, how much of this stuff was Fractsidus responsible for? Is Fractsidus actually one of the main funders of this facility, of this research institute? Is Fractsidus actually the Space Trek Collective? Why else would they use the term? Let's now turn to our accomplishments in Lahai-Roi. And then what you see over here is some of the most scientifically sophisticated stuff we've ever seen in the game. I think Fractsidus had a hand in this because it aligns with their goal of advancing civilization to the future. And it would be a really, really, really interesting twist in this story if it actually turns out that Fractsidus is, because this is like a research institute advancing towards space travel and the overall vision and the overall goal of Fractsidus, maybe they'll just be the good guys. Literally, they'll be the actual good guys over here because this is like the one institute that is directly supporting all of their goals.
shall sever the chains of yesterday.
And this is a cool shot over here. It shows you like the entire breakdown of what the Academy is going to be looking like in game. I imagine that this is going to be the entire like explorable area of the Academy. It's actually going to be massive. Like these are windows and these are all like different buildings and stuff that you can like go to. That's just what I'm expecting it is. And I'm not going to lie, guys. When you look at the architecture of this place, just hear me out for a second. When you look at the architecture of this place, doesn't it like kind of look at least a little bit like the Fabricatorium of the Deep? Like, I don't know. Like, think about it. It kind of, like, I'm just looking at it from the top-down perspective. The the design of the stuff is a little familiar. That's my personal opinion. The design and the architecture, it's a little familiar. It's a small region. That's not what I mean by that. I'm talking about the literal architecture. The stuff is like, it's very like angular, but it's also got like the circles and everything. The designs actually look kind of similar. And I would not be surprised at all if we saw similar sort of architecture over at Startorch Academy. And I'm going to be real over here. It wouldn't surprise me at all. This is also the other thing. Fractsidus also seems to be a bit more high-tech relative to a lot of the other factions that we have in the game. And wouldn't it just be nuts that a part of the reason for that is because Fractsidus is one of the main supporters of Startorch Academy, and so they gain access to some of their research. Something to keep in mind, guys.
We shall disperse the mists of tomorrow.
And just think about everything that's being said in this trailer. The stuff that's being said in this trailer is actually really similar to, if not a carbon copy of, all of the taglines that are given for the playable characters that are coming out. Should that light be reachable? Should that spark guide? Should that expectation overflow? Should that molten gold drip? Should that rainbow spill? These are all characters talking about, like, pushing the envelope, right? Moving forward. Going beyond. Going plus ultra, as they would say in Academy animes. And isn't that exactly what Fractsidus is all about as well? When we understand everything that they've done in the story, they're about going beyond. They're literally about going plus ultra. Because going plus ultra is how all of these things happened. And that's the goal. That's been their entire goal in the story the entire time. Push people beyond their limits so that they become stronger. And what is Startorch Academy doing? They're trying to push humanity beyond its limits to go explore.
Raise it up high.
And to explore, you got to be strong.
The sun that
That's what the Alien versus Predator movies told me. Traumatic.
will soon burn. See courage from the Firebringer to rekindle that torch.
And isn't there a reason why they have a tactical proving ground as well? Remember, guys, this is an academy. This is where people learn, right? They're making scientific improvements to get space travel going. But they also have a combat arena. Kind of in line with the goal of these guys, right? And why is it that they're getting a bunch of resonators? Because we know one thing about Startorch Academy is that specifically, it's a gathering place for resonators. If all you're doing is just trying to advance civilization to reach the stars, you don't necessarily need resonators for that. But they're probably going to want people from this academy to also go on the mission towards the stars as well. And they're going to need their resonator abilities to potentially fight whatever is out there.
We are sun chasers. We are the shepherds of fire.
This might also mean that the next version of Rover that we get is Fusion Rover, ladies and gentlemen. This whole thing about fire really leads me to believe that that's what's going to occur. But here's another thing as well. I think that Kuro Games has been pretty intentional with the way that they've ordered some things in the game. And one of the things that they've ordered in this game is the order in which the negative statuses appear to be releasing. Because this is the most updated negative status report. It went from Havoc Bane to Fusion Burst. And all we're hearing about is fire right now. Now, I want to show you all an older post made by Wuthering Waves. This was on November 18th, a long time ago. This was the original document that was put out by Kuro Games. And you'll notice the order that they had these listed out. It was Spectrofrazzle, right? This was when Phoebe came out, into Erosion, into Havoc Bane, into Fusion Burst, into Glacial Chafe, into Electro Flare. And the release order into the game literally has been Spectrofrazzle, into Aero Erosion, into Havoc Bane, and then Fusion Burst is next. And these guys can't stop talking about being like the Flamebringer. They can't stop talking about bringing the fire. That's all they're doing during this part of the trailer. Kind of makes sense to me that Rover might be the next Fusion Burst character.
Together, we usher in a future of light.
And so, yeah, that's the entire trailer. They're all about moving forward to the future. They're all about making themselves stronger, making humanity more intelligent, probably making humanity stronger as well. Because guess what, guys? What's a big thing about these playable units? And what's a big thing about Fractsidus as well? Take a look at this, guys. They're augmented. These individuals have some attachments on their bodies. This might be because she was amputated. Maybe she did this on purpose. You want to know another group of individuals who do things to themselves on purpose? Hey, let me go find him. These dudes are like fucked up. Like, look at that shit. He's got like a, I mean, he just looked, I mean, you can already tell he's fucked. He got like a fucking like arm and shit and like something like sticking out over here. Right? I'm not saying that the people at Startorch Academy are like this fucked up, but you can tell that there's a little bit of like chrome, right? There's a little bit of stuff going on over here. She's not the only character though, right? She looks normal. She looks normal as well. This dude is doing some weird shit with his arms. Like, look at this. Bro has glowing spectro and arrow veins. His veins are literally yellow and teal. And so the perspective is that I imagine there's some level of either like self or human experimentation, some bioengineering going on over here with some of these units. And I don't really find it surprising at all that they're doing this, right? When every other playable character, every other faction really seems to have been against this, you know, this kind of like body modification like this. Guess what's going on over here? I think that there's some influence between what's going on at Startorch Academy, the Star Trek Collective, and whatever is going on with Fractsidus over here. This seems to me like a little bit of that influence is bleeding over. Not to like the degree where they're gonna get like arms and shit growing out of their back. Hell, maybe one of the Lahai-Roi characters is gonna be looking like this. Maybe one of the Lahai-Roi characters is gonna be looking like this, right? Who knows? But I think you're all beginning to see how the puzzle pieces are fitting together. And I'm going to be honest. This looks like, from a story perspective, from a plot perspective, and like a faction perspective, this looks like, to me, one of the most exciting possible developments we've seen in the game. And I am really looking forward to seeing how this story blossoms and develops into the future, because this has the potential to be absolutely nuts, and where Wuthering Waves could go from here is insane, because they're talking about space, interdimensional travel, all of that. And once we get into that realm, the possibilities are literally endless, ladies and gentlemen. Looking forward to see how it all pans out. Let me know what you all thought about this one. In peace.